Action!
Hello and welcome to the Grudge Report featuring the Foundation. I'm Margaret Reeb and I am joined as always by Franck Marchis, who is a senior astronomer at the SETI Institute and chief science officer at Unistellar. And as I mentioned, this is the Grudge Report where we talk about the Foundation. And today we're going to talk about season 1, episode 8, which is called Missing Piece. So if you are not caught up on the Foundation, if you haven't seen this episode, beware, because we are going to spoil all of it and talk about a lot of the science, aka we're going to overanalyze the science and perhaps even unscientific parts of the episode. So get caught up, come back. If you're still here, thank you so much for tuning in. We have a lot of action this episode, Franck, and maybe we can start with, I think it's fair to say, our least favorite storyline, at least at the moment, on the Raven, with Harry's computer simulated consciousness and Gale. So I will say, I thought you would appreciate the beautiful imagery of the debris disk in the background that we see quite a lot on the Raven. Did you take note of that?
Yes, that's basically, I would say, the only interesting part of this conversation. I mean,
so what did you find not interesting about it? Let's.
I think the relationship between Gale and the hologram is kind of weird. Harry, I think Gale seems to forget that she's talking to an hologram. She's not talking to the real human being. She's very emotional on this. I mean, I don't know. She kind of looks immature to me. The reaction she has, like she wants to get out of the room. She's upset at him for telling half the truth.
Okay, but in everyone, for context, you also have 2 teenage boys, so that
yes. So basically, I remind me home exactly.
Yes, like I've seen this before. I want nothing to do with it.
I don't want to see that in a show because it's at home like that.
Yeah,
they're not that bad, but sometimes they will have this kind of reaction. But let's go back to the story. At least we have some very interesting revelations in this dramatic conversation.
Yes.
One of them is that we finally know why they're going to Helicon.
Yes, because Harry wants to establish, or he's already started to establish, a second foundation that's secret.
Yeah.
Yes, and he is a mathematician and an engineer. He wants redundancies, and that's smart. Helicon is an interesting place in general, and I guess it's sort of an interesting place as well for him to establish this foundation. But my understanding from the conversation was that the foundation on Terminus, everybody knows about it. The Emperor obviously still talks about it. It's top of everyone's mind, but this one is more secretive, and maybe he can do things and have more control over things than he would have had on Terminus.
And he doesn't want the 2 foundations to know about each other, apparently. So they need to kind of grow separately.
Is that like a double-blind experiment or something?
Yes,
right?
It looks like something like that.
Yeah, something like that, not quite.
So if Terminus is being wiped out because in the war between Anacreons and Thespian and the Empire is getting bad, at least there is another foundation somewhere else on Helicon that could help. I think that's the scenario. That's what he was trying to do. What he was trying to do at the time when he established this idea. And the second reveal we have is the reason for which the psychohistory is kind of screwed up. We finally understand this the issue here, because you remember that Harry say how psychohistory is the study of group of people and so on, and one person cannot influence psychohistory. But in fact,
you can't predict one person, right?
One person. Mm-hmm. But in fact, there is a problem here. So Gale is the issue, and not Gale herself, but the prescience, the
precognitive ability, or whatever they call it, right?
The fact that she can see the future and kind of find a way to get the future she wants. She basically bending the equation, cheating, and moving history to a direction that was unlikely based on the psychohistory algorithm or whatever Harry is using. So
Yeah, she
that's the
messed up
problem.
the plan, right?
Messed up the
She just
plan. Yeah.
her spidey senses messed it all up.
So yeah, we have that. I mean, this could have been said in a much easier way than having this dramatic conversation between those two. But that's
Well, and I think we've been circling around this point for the entire season. It's very clear that Gale has some sort of ability to sense the future. It's the same with Salvo. I'm convinced that they essentially have the same abilities in that respect, and we can get into Salvo later. But yeah, it's sort of kind of hitting the nail on the head that they have suggested in so many different ways. And then she runs away because she doesn't want to be controlled anymore by Harry, which I understand because he's a little annoying and always
just
withholds.
unplug him, you know. She doesn't have to.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I thought that's what she was going for when she was destroying the heat regulation system. But she essentially signs her own death certificate with that and says to the Harry apparition who's controlling the ship, "You have to let me go or I'm going to boil alive." And he lets her go. And where does she decide to take her little pod to, Franck?
To her home planet, Sanax. And it will take 138 years to go there. That's a weird decision, a bit, but something
we'll see.
Probably.
We'll see what happens. I have a little bit of a theory, but I don't want to say it because it's probably very wrong. But we'll see.
I've been looking at our first episodes, and it's funny how we have all those theories. Some are wrong, by the way, so it's kind of nice.
I think my theory is that Gale is going to end up on Terminus. I think that's what I think. She's the key to this. To the what do they call it? It's the floating item.
The vault.
The vault, yes. I don't know why I forgot the word. Yeah, I think she's the key somehow because it's obviously part of Harry's plan.
I can't wait to see Gao and Salvo together, the two seers that can predict the future. It's going to be very interesting to see them working together. The future they want is not going to be the same because they have different priorities.
No, I mean, people should
write a book about that.
We'll see. We'll see. It would make good TV. Okay, let's move on to Maiden. Let's take a little bit of a break from our Foundation storylines and talk about Cleon really going hard and going.
Not Cleon, Margaret.
It is Cleon.
Oh,
okay. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Empire Cleon. Yes, that's right. I can't call him Cleon, or that would be like a dig at him, and I would end up, dying from natural causes. But so Empire, brother Day goes on a pilgrimage that kills, I think, about half of the people that go through it because they're exposed to the elements, which seem very harsh. Cleon is rocking a sunburn and blisters pretty quickly, and you can't get help. Otherwise, you get pulled off of the spiral. And so what, I mean, I thought there were some interesting character developments here, but what scientific thing do you want to talk about before I add my brief aside?
So I looked, I read again about this spiral. So the spiral is 170 kilometer length, and they have to do that with no food and no water. That's the rule. So the first thing we see in the scene is when they prepare the Emperor for that, Brother Day, and they basically remove all his nanobots, his Imperial Aura, everything, all the gadget, all the technology that he has is being kind of stripped away from him. So it's kind of weird because imagine someone who has been always protected by these robots and this technology suddenly is going to be walking under the sun by temperature greater than 30 degrees Celsius probably for several days, apparently. And he expects to survive that. Okay, why not? But frankly, if you have been living in your bubble of comfort for the first 30 years of your life, being outside like this in the outdoor is not going to be easy for you. But the Emperor thinks he's going to do it. So I check a little bit the numbers here. The length of the spiral is 170 kilometers. A human walk 5 kilometers in average per hour. So that means that he can, if without a break, he could be able to do that in 34 hours. So in less than in slightly more than one day and a half, 1.5 day.
Mm-hmm.
So you can survive without water for 3 days. That's possible. That's doable.
It's not considering the elements, right?
Yes, that's a problem. The elements is the problem here. One way I was reading about survivalist website because and one way you can survive something like this is by drinking 1 or 2 liters of water before you start the hike. That will save you 1 day. So it should be okay. He could do it if he had some kind of practice and know how to walk on the rock without shoes. And that's also a problem.
And yeah,
but that's also the practice. I mean, a lot of people can do it. Some people can because they practice, right? Like they do this running without shoes. I forgot how you call that.
Right.
Yeah.
Barefoot running or something. Yes. Yeah. He's not trained at all.
Like this, whatever. Yes. So if you practice, it's okay to do. It's not easy, but it's doable. But for him, it's really a gambit. I mean, it's I'm very surprised that he took his decision, but he did it.
He did it. Yeah. I'm very skeptical that he would have actually been able to do it, but I thought that I liked this storyline a lot. And I liked particularly how when he's on the spiral, he befriends this older man who is a true believer.
Mm-hmm.
And they have this very meaningful, very short, but meaningful relationship. And it almost makes you like Cleon because you see some of his empathy and his humanity. But then by the end of the episode, you're back to not liking Cleon. Yes. So I thought that was a very interesting.
Well, when he's himself, when he's not the emperor or the empire, he's a human being.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what the show is showing. When you remove all his technology and he's anonymous, at the end, he's not such a bad person. But as soon as he came back and he became the empire again, it's over.
Yeah, he has to think about empire things. Yes. So should we talk a little bit about that? What happened?
Yeah, well, let's talk about what happened. So the spiral is truly a spiral. Is the length of the Grand Canyon, or half the length of the Grand Canyon. So it's kind of a big structure into the morphology of the planet, right? Mm-hmm. Of the satellite. It's a satellite. And then when he arrives at the middle of this, there is a cave. And in this cave, there is water. And this is supposed to be the mother womb. That's the way they say it.
The womb of the mother. Mm-hmm.
And here, what's supposed to happen? I'll let you talk about this. This is not science.
If you make it through the spiral and into the mother's womb, there is a pool of water there that you can drink and that you can cool off in. It's supposed to be sort of like this euphoric spiritual experience. And you're also could be blessed or should be blessed with a vision because you've made it through, mother's blessings have carried you to the womb. And it's a very sacred place. And so Cleon enters that and we see something in the episode that he's having this vision and he goes and reports it to the 3 representatives of the faith, a young woman, a middle-aged woman, and an older woman who are the representatives of the 3 faces of the goddess. He recounts how he saw this 3-petaled flower that is actually the center of their religion. And everybody interprets that as, the power of 3 is the 3-faced goddess, the 3-faced petal. You've had or 3-petaled flower. You've had a spiritual, holy vision, and you are one of 3 that come from the same stem, and therefore you are not an abomination. You are actually a holy part of this religion as well. So he dunks on Halima. And that's what happens. Do you want to pause there or do you want me to go?
No, it's good. I mean, you should mention that this flower is an extinct flower.
Yes.
So the fact that he has this vision is surprising because he's not supposed to know about the existence of these birth root flowers and what it looks like.
Right, because they all died off. But then we get a wonderful scene, not wonderful because of what happens, but very well acted, where Dim Razel has a conversation with Halima, ends up killing her through poison. And then we have another wonderful scene where Dim Roselle speaks with Empire and mentions that she has a pressed flower because she walked the spiral 11,000 years ago, and maybe flowers were still around then. And she had it pressed and she brought it with her on the ship, and she thinks that Empire saw it and made up the vision. And then we also get a scene where Lee Pace, the actor, is in the pool and he sees nothing. And so it's implied that he did see the flower and he made up the vision, and he actually may not have a soul in Dim Roselle's eyes, because if you don't have a vision in the mother's womb, it's a pretty good indication that you're pretty soulless. So there's a lot going on here. But what's interesting scientifically in this context that you brought up, Franck, is the first law of robotics, right?
Yes. So Demerzel is sent by Brother Day to kill Zephyr Alima. So first of all, I really wonder if that was necessary, because that's a risk to kill a leader of a religion that you want to be friend with. Is not a good idea. But that's I don't know. That's Brother Day retaliation against the fact that probably he realized that he have a soul. But Demerzel is sent there to kill her, and based on the robotic laws of Asimov, the first law is that a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction, or must allow a human being to come to harm. So a robot cannot kill a human being. But you remember last episode, we already talked about that. Demerzel's kind of alluded that she had another law above all of this, which is to protect the empire, something related to the empire. And she's been sent by the Brother Day to kill her, and she can do it because this will protect the empire. That's the logic she has here. And that's why she's capable of doing this. So there is a zero law above all of that that's been programmed into her brain, and that makes her fully a slave of the empire, basically.
Yes, because in the scene, it's pretty clear she doesn't want to kill Halima at all. And she says, there's nothing I can do. If you were to get up and run away, here's what would happen. So it seems like, yes, there's almost like an instinct that takes over, because it's programmed into her head, even if consciously she doesn't want to do it. So it's an interesting twist on the first law of robotics.
Yep. And then we can just briefly discuss about the Invictus.
Well, let's go. So do you think that Cleon had a vision or no?
No, he didn't have a vision.
Okay. Yeah.
He didn't have a vision. It's obvious at the last scene.
But then why did they show us the scene where he does see the flower?
Because he's explaining. I watched it again because I was also
he's in the middle of explaining it.
And he basically explained the vision to the Zephyrs and the head of the religion. So he's basically describing what he saw. And then the last scene, we see what he really saw, which is nothing. He sat in the water, waiting for a vision that did not come. And Demerzel said he must be very sad not to have a vision.
Yes, she makes a very pointed comment at him.
This is going to impact him, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have not seen the next episode, so I'm very curious. I hope they keep the storyline going in that episode. But yes, okay. So we'll talk about that more when we see more of it. The Invictus, which is to me also not my favorite storyline, but this episode we have some cool information. I'm just going to kind of very high level go over what happened so that we can talk about what occurs in the navigation room, which I think is probably the most interesting part of the episode. Farah and her lieutenant they're trying to kind of recapture Salvo and Louis Pyrene, correct? Louis and Salvo have managed to kind of get away.
Yeah.
And at the same time-ish, Hugo, who we realize is in fact not dead, and he put in an SOS call to Thespians, it turns out, is successful because we have some thespian ships that show up and start firing on the Invictus. At the same time, the countdown to the next jump is getting close to 0, and there's a lot of pressure on everyone. And Salvo and Lewis end up in the navigation room where they find the dead bodies of many of the, I would guess, like officials or high-ranking people on the ship, including the Navigator. And what is interesting about the Navigator, Franck?
Well, that's, I remind you that Invictus is the ancient technology of the Empire. So what happened is that when they started developing what they call the transspatial navigation system, that's the official name they use in the show, which is basically the jump, which distort the space-time by creating a black hole, etc. They didn't have the spacers yet. So what they had is a human being called a navigator who will basically sacrifice himself. He will link himself, his brain, to the AI of the spaceship, and decide where the spaceship will go. And the way he decides, this navigator is capable of deciding this, is by making a wish. It's not. There's no coordinates here. There is no rational alpha, delta, gamma coordinates and all of this. No, it just basically the navigator must make a wish, and it's part of the intuition system, and basically the transspatial event will bring the spaceship where the navigator made his wish. It's the reason I want to talk about that. It's because for most people this will not look like scientific. But in fact, we do have science field which work more or less like that. One of them is quantum mechanics. We know that we don't do things by making a wish, but we have an entire system established by a bunch of equations, okay? And we know that if we look at the system, we modify the system has different state. It can be an electron can be orbiting around an atom at this location and this location, but in fact, it's neither of those. He has a probability of existence in each of them. So it's a little bit like making a wish. It's a science which is not what we say in French Cartesian. I think in English we can use that as well. It's a science which is more kind of related to there is a word for that I can find, of course, but it's not. It's more. Is based on a concept more than anything.
Conceptual, based on probability,
yes.
Right?
Yes. And general relativity was like that too. In fact, still like that. When we found out that when Albert Einstein found out that he has to revise the equation of gravity and created this space continuum concept and the general relativity, those were a bunch of equations that he created in his mind. And now we know that they follow the reality, but they're not probably the reality. They're a mimic of the reality. So I like that scene because I think it's important that people realize that more and more, the more we progress scientifically speaking, the more we use this kind of scientific concept, which are concepts. And we don't really understand them. They do work. And one of them is the constrictor theory that I mentioned in one of the first episodes, which is a new type of physics where basically you put into a box all the equations of a system and different behavior, and then you shake it up and you see what happened. Okay, it's the same thing.
Yeah. No, I did not put that together. I actually really didn't like that line about making a wish, but now that you've put that spin on it, I do like it a lot. And I guess that Salvo and Gail maybe are more sensitive to quantum mechanics than other people, and they know what's going to happen. I think about that a lot when, the SETI Institute has a lot of really great speakers that come and talk about their work. And recently we had some folks who study black holes. And when they talk about them, my question to them, or just what I thought in my head was, when you are researching this, do you lose do you are you constantly thinking that like this is real, it exists, or to you is it just so far removed? Is it such a concept that it feels like fiction? I don't know. It's very interesting. Um,
Yeah,
because
I will say that I was reading a book last week about one of the main issue we have now in physics and science in general is that if we study a system, we are very good now at generated small theory for each part of the system. But if we want to study, understand the concept, the entire system itself, we have no tools. And I think we are reaching the limit of the physics that we are doing now. And that's why there is this new theory coming out, like constructor theory, etc., which are going to help us to reach this level of complexity that we are limited by the tools we have at the moment. Yeah, this person was in this book. They were describing the immune system, for instance, of a body. We do understand very well each part of it, but we don't understand the global behavior. And it's the same for a lot of things in physics. So yeah, I like this scene because of that. I think it's a very it was very interesting as well, the conversation about how they were doing the transspatial event before, and and the sacrifice of this navigator. Basically, someone who's gonna is gonna die. They mentioned that. I mean, after a few weeks, you die because you connected to this machine, and but you basically travel through the space continuum, which is kind of cool.
yes, and as we've established, unaugmented human beings go crazy, or they lose themselves when they're awake, or they're a part of this. And on that note, Salvo tries to get Lewis to plug her into the ship's computer without having the surgery that normally back in the day the Navigator would have. But I don't know, I thought during this scene that she would be fine because of her abilities. And then Farah gets into the navigation chamber, kills Lewis or injures him greatly, and a firefight ensues, and then the jump happens. And no one is safe, and everybody is unplugged they're just lying on the floor. So I really also liked when they panned out and you could see it's a black hole, correct, in the middle, and then everything gets sucked right on into it.
Yeah.
What did you think of that?
Well, I confirmed our theory we had that it creates a small black hole and distort the space-time, and then go through an artificial wormhole created by the spaceship itself. It was it's a cool scene, definitely. We see it more, the jump in more detail.
Yes. And that's where the episode ends, right?
Yep.
We don't I don't know what happens.
We don't know. We're going to talk about this next week.
Next week, yes. Anything else that we've missed from this episode?
No, I just want to mention that we see what happened on Anacreon. I know you don't like that scene that much. Just at the beginning, we have this scene where Farah is playing with her brother when she was younger, and we see the destruction of the planet by the Empire, which basically launch thousands of missiles. I read online that people are arguing what kind of missiles those are, the atomic bombs or whatever. I don't know, but yeah, this will have an impact on the planet.
Yeah.
We see how many there were, and we also see the impact when they land on the surface. They basically blew up and wiped out a significant area of the planet.
Yeah. Yes, this scene, I think, is supposed to humanize Farah even more, but she's very one note right now. She's very, bent on violence based on what happened. And, it's terrible what happened, but I want to see more of the layers of who she is as a human being versus just this one note of an individual, because she's very interesting, or has the potential to be. So I didn't think that scene really added much, other than a debate about missiles, so which maybe people like that. So more props to you. But yes, that is how the episode opens. And so Farah kind of bookmarks the episode because they open with her and then they close with her in this ship getting sucked into nowhere. And hopefully we'll find out what happens next time.
Okay, well, I'll see you next week then.
Yes, we will see everyone next week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Just a quick reminder that we are a product of the SETI Institute. And the SETI Institute is a nonprofit research institution whose mission is to understand the nature and origin of life in the universe. So if you're interested in the SETI Institute or the Grudge Report, please click one of the links below and you can get more information. You can even subscribe if you would like to be notified when the next episode of the Grudge Report comes out. Thank you again so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Bye. Triple blessing to you, Margaret.
Triple blessings.